reading the story and information of SCP-354. It seems to be quite the interesting one, so let's get started. SCP-354, Object Class Keter, Special Containment Procedures. Due to SCP-354's immobile nature, Area 354 has been built around it. Area 354 houses forces and D-Class personnel prepared to deal with threats emerging from SCP-354, as well as researchers studying SCP-354 and its properties. For their own safety, no on-site personnel are to approach SCP-354 at any time. Direct interaction with SCP-354 is permitted only for the purpose of research and to eliminate SCP-354, and must be approved by O5 personnel. Area 354 was constructed to contain and neutralize any and all further threats emerging from SCP-354. At the heart of Area 354, a 20-foot wall of concrete reinforced with data expunged has been constructed around SCP-354 to prevent emerging entities from escaping into the area at large. High-speed motion detection cameras are placed atop the wall, looking down into the pool, and armed guards can easily shoot down into the enclosure from catwalks placed above the pool. SCP-354 is a pool of red liquid discovered in northern Canada. The liquid is of a consistency similar to that of human blood, hence the colloquial name blood pond. But it is not of a biological nature. The pool does not have definite banks. Soil mixes with liquid until at a certain point there is more soil than liquid and the ground is mostly solid. The liquid becomes denser as one descends deeper into the pool. If the pool has a bottom, it is yet to be reached. Periodically, entities emerge from the pool and attempt to escape the enclosure. Thus far, nearly all creatures emerging from SCP-354 have been extremely hostile and highly dangerous. SCP-354 is believed to have first been discovered in Redacted by survivors of a plane crash who encountered SCP-354 by chance. SCP-354 had developed into a local urban legend long before Foundation personnel arrived to deal with the threat. After locating the source of the legend, SCP personnel set up Watch Station Epsilon-38 to monitor the pool and to deter future travelers from finding it. SCP-354 was classified as Euclid until its properties were further discovered. At 14:03 hours on a redacted date, an unidentified entity emerged from SCP-354. Contact with Watch Station Epsilon-38 was lost. Mobile Task Force Redacted was dispatched to deal with the entity and were eventually successful. All personnel at Watch Station Epsilon-38 were found dead. Area 354 was subsequently constructed to contain SCP-354. Documentation 3541 Task Force Redacted. SCP-3542, a bear-sized mammalian creature covered in razor-sharp spines. It resembled an echidna. It was virtually bulletproof, but was unable to escape the enclosure surrounding the pool. It was neutralized via napalm. SCP-3543, a black metallic sphere capable of levitation. It emitted concentrated levels of radiation in precisely directed beams sufficient to instantly cripple and later result in death. The then area head, Dr. Redacted, struck SCP-3543 with a sledgehammer, disabling it. SCP-3543 then self-detonated, causing minor structural damage and severely wounding Dr. Redacted and Dr. Redacted. Severely wounding Dr. Redacted. The doctor in question made a full recovery and has been commended for his bravery. SCP-3544, a humanoid reptilian creature, approximately 4.6 meters tall. It escaped both the walled enclosure and Area 354 altogether. I wonder, does reading this slowly put you into a hypnotic state as I read? It's working on me. I'm feeling sleepier. Anyway, gunfire caused very little physical harm and was highly ineffective. Mobile Task Force Omega-7 Pandora's Box was dispatched and successful in neutralizing the creature. Number 5 has its data expunged. Number 6. Oh, let's have a look at this one. Number 6 appeared to be a human male of Indian descent. As the enclosure around the pool had not yet been fully repaired, SCP-3546 was immediately shot before it had a chance to escape. Area Head Dr. Redacted has expressed his displeasure in the rash execution of SCP-3546, which testing revealed to be identical to an average human being. Data corrupted, and it goes to 14. Majority of the creature's body remained well beneath the surface of the pool. 5 octopus-like tentacles were seen emerging from the pool and reached up over the enclosure. Several D-Class personnel were grabbed by the tentacles and pulled back beneath the surface of the pool. After receiving massive damage from gunfire, SCP-354-14 retreated back into the pool and disappeared. No personnel taken by the creature were recovered. Number 15. A feline creature composed of a blue-hued crystalline structure, later revealed to be ice. It was able to jump over the walled enclosure and was agile enough to dodge most gunfire. It was actively hostile and mauled by any personnel that engaged it. The subject engaged SCP-35416 upon its emergence from the pool and was terminated in the fight. SCP-35416 was a feline creature composed of a dark red-black stone, later revealed to be partially solidified magma. Gunfire proved mostly ineffective, and it was not hostile to personnel and did not attempt to escape the walled enclosure until being engaged by SCP-354-15. Successfully terminated SCP-354-15 and grew less active as its body cooled. After fully solidifying and having remained motionless since, the subject was moved to Dr. Redacted's office for aesthetic purposes. Number 18. possessed a cloaking device rendering it invisible to human eyes. Subject was highly adept at combat and killed nearly 90% of Area 354's guard personnel as it rampaged through the facility, approximately 60 minutes after emerging from the pool. The subject ceased function and powered down. Subject was dismantled and its power cell disposed of. The subject's remains are under study. Oh dear. A note from the area head, Dr. Redacted. That's thrice now that we've had to fall back to Pandora's box to deal with stuff coming out of SCP-354. Abel can't complain though. You can tell he enjoyed fighting SCP-354 for 11. Maybe we should set up some kind of hotline to Mobile Task Force Epsilon 7. Document 354-3A. Log of Exploratory Mission 354 Alpha. Let us have a look-see at that. The Expedition Personal Log of Dr. Redacted. Our expedition to explore SCP-354. That gaping wound in the middle of Canada has finally been accepted. The R&D boys have come up with what can only be described as a submarine with a drill on it. We know that the pool gets denser as you go down, so we suspect that at some point we won't be sinking so much as digging. Hence the huge mining device built into it. It's not hydrodynamic at all, but we're not really going swimming here. My gut tells me that there's something on the other side of the red pool, and just digging down to China is all we have to do. Personal log of Dr. Redacted. Had a nice long debate with 05 Redacted over who's allowed to come. I wanted Mobile Task Force Epsilon 7 to come with us for protection, or at least SCP-076, but they won't allow it. Despite the massive damages he continues to cause, they still see him as too valuable to risk losing. Not that he isn't, immortal or anything. Maybe they just didn't have the guts to ask him to go exploring. Ackler, that ass, wanted us to take SCP Redacted with us, but I wouldn't allow it. The file says SCP Redacted was just born before he came through, so he'd be useless as a guide. He might be of some use as security, but that's mostly cancelled out by the fact that he's data expunged. He'd probably just redacted anyway. The final crew complement, apart from myself, consists of 3 agents, 2 D-class personnel, 1 geologist, and some guy from R&D who's going to pilot the ship. I already forgot all their names. Exploratory Team 354 Alpha. Mission log day 1. Rotten sort of day to begin the mission. Rumor has it that last night there was a total containment breach in some area or other. Then it turns out that there's no coffee allowed anywhere inside of Area 354 for some reason or another. And the whole mission almost ended in disaster when it turns out that they forgot to load extra fuel on board. Who the fuck is running the show around here? Anyway, we are now underway. For a while, I had a definite feeling of going downward, but now we're dropping much more slowly. Marty, that's the R&D guy's name, says that we're sinking at a rate of 10 meters per hour. Apparently, at this depth, the red pool is pretty damn dense. Mission log. Nothing of interest happened, but I learned everyone's names. We have Marty, our pilot, Agent Swanson, Agent Turquoise, Agent 86, Dr. J. MacArthur, Chris Simmons, and Leroy Tucker. Whoop-de-freaking-doo. Day 3. At about 4:30 a.m., gravity suddenly changed direction. Boy, that was a fun way to wake up. We're now rising rather than sinking, which means we're more than halfway there. Mission log day 4. reach the surface through the portholes. It's mostly dark, which means it's night. We can't go out yet because for all we know the atmosphere could be hydrochloric acid. We've got a shitload of sensors outside the ship analyzing a bunch of things. Whether the air is breathable, what kind of airborne bacteria we have to deal with, and simple things like temperature. We'll know in 8 hours whether it's safe for human life out there. Turns out that the air is totally safe, except it's been night for 28 hours now. What's going on? Dawn finally came. The sun was huge and red. I'm a biologist, but I know enough about astronomy to know that we're orbiting a totally different star. Is this a different time, a different place, or a different dimension? Leroy guessed that we're in another plane of existence, and I think he's probably closest. The pool on this side is much bigger than a large pond, or maybe a small lake. The banks are more defined than our side as well. We took an inflatable raft to the shore. Marty and Simmons stayed behind and headed north. The ground here, or at least around the pool, is almost totally devoid of plant life. The only green we saw was a funny moss growing on the ground that looked more like a kind of mold. The ground is a greyish tan dirt that's like a mixture of sand and flour. MacArthur said that it was some mineral or another, but I forgot what he called it. I half expected all of our electronics not to work there, but that wasn't the first thing to fail. After about 2 hours of hiking across flat, boring ground, the compass suddenly changed direction. Now it points to what we had previously thought was east. Evidently, this planet's magnetic isn't even a planet. Doesn't work the same way as ours does. Not wanting to risk getting lost, we immediately made a 180-degree turn and headed back to the ship. I could have sworn that the trip back was less than half as long as the trip out. Tomorrow we'll work out a way of navigation that doesn't rely on the compass being sane. Day 7, lousy night's sleep. The sun never went down. By my calculations, the day-night cycle here seems to last about 43 hours, as opposed to 24 hours back home. That's going to take some getting used to. We agreed on a system of navigation. Firstly, we're only going to travel in a straight line. To make sure we can get back to the ship by simply turning around and heading in the other direction. Unless we encounter some kind of unnavigable jungle, we should be fine. Secondly, Marty's rigged a radio beacon thing. I don't remember his explanation, but if we're anywhere within 800 miles, his little gizmo will be able to tell us exactly which direction to go to get back and how far. Day 9. We set out a few hours before the sun was scheduled to rise, but when we got to the shore, we found the green moss stuff was everywhere. It had grown in mass significantly. My guess is that the stuff shrivels up in the sun during the day and expands at night to suck in nutrients or something. We decided we didn't want to walk through it, so we went back and waited for sunrise. Sun came up and we set out again. The moss stuff was back to its smaller state. It just occurred to me that there'd been no wind at all in this place. The result is dead silence. I'm not ashamed to admit that the overall emptiness of this place is rather frightening. We found an area with none of the moss stuff for a few hundred feet. Hold on, give me a moment. Right. We found an area with none of the moss stuff for a few hundred feet around, and decided to camp for the night. The sun is still up, but it's time for us humans to sleep, so I'm calling it night. Day 10. Sometime in the night, which was really daytime. This is going to get confusing. We were all awoken by some kind of roar. You remember what the T-Rex sounded like in that old movie Jurassic Park? It sounded like that. Big and reptilian. It was so loud that I was certain whatever was making it couldn't be more than 20 feet away. But when we all out of our tents. We saw nothing. The whole area is flat, so we'd see any sort of animal within half a mile or so, but there was truly nothing. Fucking scary, to say the least. We packed up camp and continued on. After a while, we stopped seeing the moss stuff. Maybe it only grows around the red pool. And the ground became rockier. In the distance, the land seemed to grow more hilly. I think I see trees. Day 11. The bare ground has ended now, and we're walking across a vast field of beautiful green grass. It almost looks like a well-mown lawn. The grass seemed ordinary enough until Turquoise tripped over a rock and arose to find his hands covered with several dozen bloody pinpricks. Apparently the tip of a blade of this grass is incredibly sharp and easily punctures skin. It's no threat to our Foundation issue boots, but we must all be careful not to fall on it. We came to a tiny stream, really no more than a trickle. Swanson suggested we could refill our canteens, but Leroy and MacArthur wanted to check the water for something or other first. MacArthur took out some equipment and after a few minutes announced that it was not water, but liquid carbon dioxide. CO2 is usually a gas at this temperature and it's never a liquid. The laws of physics don't seem to be working right. Day 14. Haven't had time to record anything for a few days. We made it to an area sparsely populated by trees. The grass there was withered and brown, and not sharp enough to pierce the skin anymore. The trees were ordinary and looked like birch, but the leaves were wrong. At some point we lost Swanson. The place is so quiet that none of us really feel comfortable talking, so we have no idea when we lost him. There's a good 8-hour window where he could have gone missing. We called to him, but none of us wanted to split up to look for him. During the night, a tree fell on 86's tent. He wasn't hurt and none of the gear was damaged, although the tent got mangled beyond repair. 86 swears that the tree hadn't been that close when he pitched the thing, and none of us can tell what caused it to fall. The trunk just snapped. We all agreed not to pitch our tents anywhere near a tree from now on. The next day, which was really nighttime, we heard the same roar from a few days ago. It sounded exactly the same as before, and again, we have no idea what made the sound. And none of us can even agree which direction it came from. Then it started to rain, so we all pitched our tents for the night. This time a whole lot closer than we had before. The nearest tree is about 300 feet away. MacArthur confirmed that it was actual rain and not more CO2 bullshit, and we set up this funnel thing to refill our canteens. Leroy donated his tent to 86 and I offered to share mine, since it's a little bigger than the other guys. I asked Leroy what he did to wind up as a D-class. He said he raped a couple of people. I think he might have been trying to freak me out, but who knows. Anyway, he's one of the most well-behaved D-classes I've ever met, so I don't think he's going to, say, assault me in my sleep. 3 days later, day 17. Thank God the rain has finally stopped. Everything is soaking wet, including us, except for the ground. After that much water, you'd expect it to be muddy as all hell, but the ground beneath the grass is barely damp at all. Perhaps the planets absorb moisture from the ground more efficiently than the ones back home. We're setting out again. Perhaps the rain awakens some animal life. Data corrupted. Day 25. What seemed to be a huge cliff in the distance turned out to be an artificially constructed wall. It's made of solid rusted iron, and it stands maybe 50 feet high. To the left and to the right it goes on farther than the eye can see. I can't imagine how thick it is. We have no way around it. We have to go over it or through it. We make camp for the night. We work out what to do in the morning. Day 26. Leroy jury-rigged some kind of blowtorch thing with our equipment. I swear this guy is like MacGyver. We cut a hole in the iron wall big enough for us to go through. It turns out it's only about 1/4 of an inch thick, but there's another wall behind it with less than a foot between. Apparently this thing is multiple layers. Leroy cut through 8 of them before we finally made it through the other side. The grass on this side is black, not burnt or anything, it's just a different color. apparently there's some wind. I was getting tired of data corrupted. Concluded that coming here was a mistake. We have to turn back. Day 39. We passed through the second barrier and we're back to the weird place with the black grass. Black grass. I half expected the hole Leroy cut through to have sealed up or something, but it was still there. Thank God, whoever runs the show in this world. I don't think MacArthur was going to make it through the night. He lost a lot of blood. Day 40. We awoke to find that MacArthur had crossed. We didn't want to do it, but we had no choice to terminate him. 86 said something back home might be able to help him, and it may have been right, but we couldn't afford to have him slow us down. We only have a few more days until data corrupted. Day 46, we made it back to the ship with only an hour or two to spare. The first thing they asked was what happened to Swanson, Turquoise, MacArthur, and 86, as if a few dead team members are our biggest problems right now. Marty has us underway, and we're definitely sinking. I just hope they don't. Data corrupted. End of log. This document was discovered in the Central Foundation database. No such mission to explore SCP-354 has yet been suggested or approved. No records of any personnel mentioned in this log exist. The log's origin is unknown. Going back to the main event. Event log 35420. In the morning of data expunged, the entire staff of Area 354 evacuated the facility. However, the staff also shut down power to the area and took a number of supplies and vehicles from the facility, indicating that the evacuation had not been done due to an emergency. Mobile Task Force Theta 12 was dispatched to investigate the cause of the evacuation and, if possible, make contact with area staff. However, before Mobile Task Force Theta 12 could make contact with Area 354 or its evacuees, the area's on-site warhead was detonated, resulting in destruction of the entire facility and the deaths of data expunged. Task Force Theta 12 was ordered to make contact with the evacuated personnel, and in the event of hostility was given clearance to terminate any uncooperative personnel. A large convoy of vehicles taken from Area 354 was spotted heading southward at high speed. Final audio logs from Theta 12 indicate the convoy was made up of Area 354 staff, and that the previous chain of command had broken down in its entirety. With armed D-class personnel and research personnel firing upon Task Force Theta, Task Force Theta was annihilated, and no further contact with former personnel of Area 354 has been made ever since. Document 3545. Following the total destruction of Area 354, the Red Pool containment site was constructed in its place. Unlike previous facility, which was focused on research and neutralization, the new facility is devoted entirely to the containment of SCP-354 and entities which may emerge from it, as well as any unseen forces which it may create directly. This is due largely to the advertisement of the new site head, Data Expunged, who believes that the events of Log 35420 were the result of a psychic or mental attack generated by SCP-354 itself. Document 3546. Interview regarding Data Expunged. Dr. Redacted says, "Is it alright if I record this?" Agent Redacted says, "Yes, go ahead." The doctor says, "Good, good. So let's start at the beginning. What happened at the Red Pool containment site?" The agent replies, "Looking back now, it seems strange that nobody ever suggested draining the pool. When Dr. Redacted came up with it, it seemed like such a good idea at the time." The other doctor says, "Exactly what about the idea was so appealing?" The agent says, "It was a way out. That SCP entry, I've read what it says. It's a joke. It makes it seem like we have the pool under control." The doctor says, "I take it you do not." says, there's a half-meter slab of reinforced concrete in place over the pool, and yet every time some beast tries to come through it somehow, it manages to get loose into the building. People die every single time. I've seen data expunged a man's own intestines. Can you imagine what that looks like, old man? The doctor says, so to you, and of course to the other people stationed at the Red Pool containment site as well. Draining the pool seemed like a fine solution to the suffering caused by SCP-354. The agent stands up and the chair scrapes as he says, suffering. That thing doesn't just... The doctor says, please sit down. This is going on record. So, O5 approved the draining of SCP-354. Then what happened? They evacuated the non-essential personnel to a location a kilometer away, leaving just basic defense crew and the people who run the equipment, mostly D-Class, plus a few agents to keep things going. And you were among those agents? Yes. How did they try to drain the pool? The tech guys brought in this big pump thing with all these hoses. We retracted the slab, but... Have you ever had a dream, the agent says, where it seemed so real but you knew you were dreaming and it felt like you had to wake up to escape from it? The doctor says, I can't say I have. The agent says, yes you have. We all have. That's what it felt like when they put the hose in to try and drain it. Everything stopped being real. It was like we had to escape right now. The doctor says, and you were the only one feeling this sensation? The agent says, no. Everyone had it at the same time. It came from the fucking pool. The doctor says, please lower your voice. What happened when they activated the pump? The agent says, we never did. We couldn't. It wouldn't let us. What wouldn't let you? The pool. The doctor says, please, I ask you to lower your voice. Up until now, the agent says, it's been content just throwing monsters at us. It's been playing. But now we have it locked up and we just tried to execute it. Now it's angry. The doctor on the PA goes to the guards and says, please restrain the agent. Agent says, my buddy measured its banks once and compared them to photos from its first discovery. You know what he found? It's growing. Guards, it's growing. The pool is growing. It gets bigger and stronger every day, and we've made it angry. Get your hands off. The doctor says, sedate him. We'll continue in the morning, if he's lucid by then. So, ladies and gents, we hope you've enjoyed this reading of SCP-354. A deep, dark pool, which may yet lead to another world. What would you do in another dimension, where nothing is as it seems? As always, if you